Russia out of poverty in the 19th, 20th century.
Okay.
Do you know anything about the Great Chinese Starvation?
Yeah, I do actually.
It was pretty good, right? Yeah, let's talk about that.
All right. Yeah. So what was China like before the Chinese Communist Party came to power?
Oh, it was terrible. And
what is China like now?
It got much better after they killed all of the people by stealing farms.
What is it like now? I'm asking you, what is it like now? What is
China like now?
Compared to how it was before?
So you're saying that
no. Greatest is China better off now? So have millions of people been lifted from poverty. How many power plants were there before the Chinese Communist Party came into power?
Oh, well, did they have pickles there?
How many are there now?
Did they have pickles?
Steel mills. Did you know China didn't have a single steel mill before the Communist Party came to power? Now they make half the steel in the world. Did you know that?
Before the Super Bowl era, China was way worse off. So I think since we started having the Super Bowl every year,
were there famines before the Chinese communists came to power? Were there famines before they came to power? Now, who cured the famines in China? Hundreds of millions of people were dying every year, over and over and over. People were dying. They had the century of humiliation where
hundreds of millions
all the time under capitalism, under free trade, people were dying. The Chinese Communist Party came in. They
imperialism
brought tractors to the countryside. They brought tractors to the countryside. They mechanized agriculture. And yeah, in the 1960s, there was a horrendous famine in the early 60s.
That just came about. It just came about.
That cured.
It came about.
No, it was a result of the fact that China was an underdeveloped country. That's what it was the result of. It was a result of the fact that China had been an underdeveloped country for so long, and they were rapidly trying to industrialize. And they clearly made mistakes in the process of industrializing. But then the Chinese Communist Party are the ones that prevented China from ever having something like that again, which happened all the time before they came to power. That's what you're missing. Right? You know, I mean, I don't understand this. Like, so, I'm trying to think of an analogy that might be good, but it's like, what might be a good analogy? If someone's a drug addict for 20 years and then they go into rehab, and after they've been in rehab for a year, they relapse, right? And then they go back into rehab and then they never use drugs again. Is rehab responsible for them using drugs?
Oh, so you're saying the opposite is true for communism?
I'm saying that communism cured China of having starvation. And you're saying that because there was an episode of starvation in the early 60s, that doesn't count.
Well, what actually happened in 1959? What happened?
In 1959, there was
what happened? Did someone come to power?
Policies that they were trying to rapidly industrialize. The Soviet Union cut them off, right? The Soviet Union had been helping them develop, and the Soviet Union cut them off. And they had people misreporting how much they were growing, and there was confusion, and it led to a disaster. The same kind of disaster that had happened over and over and over again. There was a famine in 1928 where millions of people died. There was a famine in 1946 where millions of people died. There was a famine in 1890 where millions of people died. There was famines all the time. Are those famines the fault of capitalism?
So your analysis is that the Great Starvation that happened in the late 50s and early 60s
is not representative.
Your characterization.
Bad thing that happened one time that the Chinese Communist Party cured does not speak for the entire experience of that.
I want to ask you though, and I broke your rule.
Back to my drug rehab example, right?
Well, I broke your rule.
Uses drugs for 20 years, goes into rehab to stop using drugs, then relapses in rehab for a year, and then goes back into rehab and never uses drugs again. Did rehab cause them to be a drug addict?
So my question to you,
in that
situation, it is rehab's fault. Yes, in your retarded
even though
analogy.
But it just had a relapse during the curing process.
I want to know what you're honest, and let's have a good faith. Let's have a good faith discussion here.
China before the communists
is your assertion that it was a lack of central planning that caused the Great Starvation in China? It was a lack of central planning caused that?
My assertion is that the Great Leap Forward was a failure as they were trying to set up what they'd never had before, which was a modern agricultural system. And as they were bringing tractors to the countryside, and as they were building power plants, and as they were constructing a national plan in order to get rid of these things,
something the free market didn't do anywhere. Something that wasn't able to be accomplished by the free market anywhere else in the industrialized world.
Really? Because there were hundreds of millions of people that died before the communists came in. In 1928, Edgar Snow, the author of Red Star Over China, talked about how he was in 1928 in China and millions of people were starving to death. And one of the main reasons they were starving to death was because China had no central government to mobilize relief. When the crops failed in one area, the government had no ability. There was no central government. There were warlords that controlled different regions, and they had no ability to bring food